Yes, madam. That's right.
Okay, thank you very much. Uh, my dear learners, good evening. This is Dr. Sujata Datta Hazarika, Senior Regional Director, IGNOU Kolkata Regional Center, welcoming you all for this special lecture in webinar mode. On behalf of IGNOU Kolkata Regional Center, it is my proud privilege to welcome Professor Shomir Das for joining us today. For the event, which is organized by IGNOU as per guidelines of the Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, for campaigning on Mera Pehla Vote Desh ke Liye, with the objective to ensure universal enlightened participation of youth in elections. My dear learners, the Election Commission of India on the 23rd has called upon all young voters, including the first time voters, to vote in record numbers and celebrate the ChunavKaParv and join the Mera Pehla Vote Desh Ke Liye movement. My dear learners, as the largest democracy in the world, India's most significant victory on its 76th year of independence is its indivisible unity in diversity. We have achieved this through India's democratic legacy, which emphasizes the importance of equality, harmony, freedom, acceptability, and inclusion. That is an integral part of Indian culture from ancient times to the present. As an emerging, developed economy, India's booming youth is one of its invaluable resources, which has the potential to not only drive the destiny of India's civilizational heritage, but it also has the power to decide the future of our common global destiny as a planet. We are talking here of sheer number by which we dominate this world. We have to empower the youth with enlightened citizenship, sensitize them on balanced ideas of democratic rights and duties, motivate their commitment to democratic ideals of collective justice if India has to achieve its aspired destiny as a global leader and our national goals towards Viksit Bharat. My dear young learners who are voting for the first time, I request you reflect on this invaluable opportunity to vote when a number of nations still have discrimination of voting rights. Reflect on this precious power to be informed decision makers for nation building towards creating a sustainable world in the future. I congratulate you all for this rare opportunity and the blessings with which we want to let you go into the world as a first time voters. Professor Shomir Kumar Das he is from the political science and is Department of Calcutta University. He is presently the director, Institute of Foreign Policy Studies, University of Calcutta, formerly Vice Chancellor of the University of North Bengal, Dean, Faculty of Arts, University of Calcutta, and Adjunct Professor of the School of Foreign Service, Georgetown University. He is presently the coordinator of the University Grants Commission Departmental Research Support, UGC DRS program on democratic governance, a postdoctoral fellow of the Social Science Research Council, South Asia program, and a visiting professor to University 13 Sorbonne, Paris Cité. He specializes in and writes on issues of ethnicity, security, migration, rights, justice, and democracy. We are extremely grateful to have Professor Das with us here, and I'm sure you will benefit so much from his experiences, his insights, so that you can be part of the informed decision making, which is going to enhance and empower democracy even further. Thank you very much, Professor Das. Thank you for joining us here. You may please start your lecture.
Thank you.
Thank
Dear learners, am I audible? I
you.
think
Yes,
I am. Yes.
yes, you're audible.
So I begin with a word of thanks to IGNOU Regional Center, to the Ministry of Higher Education, to the Ministry of Youth Affairs, and to Dr. Sujata Datta Hazarika, in particular, who's the regional director of, uh, senior regional director of IGNOU, happens to be my good friend as well. Now, let me first of all tell you what I'm going to do in course of this lecture. I think I will try to do three things. One is this, that how are elections so pivotal to the functioning of democracy? In other words, you can't think of democracy without elections and elections without democracy. They are complementary and uh, sort of mutually spiraling nature. So I will touch upon that uh, in the first part. In the second part, I will try to focus on why we should observe it as a festival. Uh, in other words, you know that India is the largest democracy, as Dr. Hazarika has already told you. It's the most populous democracy in the world. And it's really amazing that a democracy has been functioning with seamless periodic elections uh, for the last 76 years or so. Elections indeed were held before our independence, but those were of limited nature, in the sense that those were limited to only a few social constituencies, so to say. So that's the second thing, that why we are to celebrate it as a festival. And the third is that what have the fathers of our constitution to say about how we conduct ourselves in course of elections. In other words, teasing out some of the insights, and I describe them as gems of insights offered by the great fathers of the Constitution of India while they were uh, framing the Constitution. You know that they were all part and parcel of the Constituent Assembly of India, that took a long time to frame the Constitution, to scrutinize each and every provision of it. So, what do they have to say uh, in terms of uh, offering their advice while how we conduct ourselves in course of elections, how as citizens we need to conduct ourselves in course of elections? So that's a sort of threefold scheme which I will touch upon, and I will take about half an hour or so to conclude. Let me begin with the first, that how are elections so pivotal to the functioning of democracy, particularly in a country like India? One is that all of you know that everywhere, we make a distinction between the governors and the governed, the rulers and the ruled, in whatever way you frame them, whatever words you use to describe them. But democracy is a regime which is committed to the idea of narrowing the gap between the governors and the governed. And elections offer you the opportunity uh, of of selecting the governors, those who are supposed to govern us, and those who are supposed to make decisions, and make decisions which affect us. So, in a sense, you know that it's like sort of self-governing. It gives us the opportunity of governing ourselves, because those whom we choose as legislators and vote them to power, they actually act on our behalf, uh, and there's a kind of identification between the governors and the governed, which a democracy offers. And it's through the instrumentality of elections that this could happen. And in that sense, you know that elections are so crucial to democracy. Number one. And number two is this, that elections, by way of casting your vote, you you become proud of yourself. In other words, it equips us with a sense of self pride, and a self pride which actually makes us into good citizens in a democratic country. In other words, you know that by way of casting your vote, you become true citizens of the country, and by becoming true citizens of the country,
सर
uh,
थोड़ा हिंदी बोलिए सर.
I
Uh,
I will try at the end, if I can. I have some problems. I can understand Hindi, and you know that speaking in Hindi continuously might be a problem. ये जो बोल रहा हूँ ये ऐसा है कि
I will intervene here, Professor. One second. Uh, ये this was not supposed to be in हिंदी. अगर आपको कुछ इसमें कुछ जानना है तो वो बाद में हम इसको ट्रांसलेट करके भी डाल सकते हैं, लेकिन हम लोगों ने प्रोफेसर शोमित दास को हम लोगों ने यहाँ पे अंग्रेजी में लेक्चर देने के लिए बुलाया, तो आप इसको समझने की कोशिश कीजिए। बाद में अगर आपको चाहिए तो हम उनको ट्रांसलेट करके भी आपके लिए डाल सकते हैं। ठीक है, सो प्लीज बेयर विद अस, आई एम श्योर यू विल अंडरस्टैंड बिकॉज हिज इंग्लिश इज एक्सट्रीमली सिंपल। आप थोड़ा सा
thank you.
later on you can give this
I will try to sort of make it
yes,
simpler as well.
yes, of
So it
course.
gives us a sense of self pride, uh, in the sense that by way of casting your vote, you are entitled to citizenship, and by way of becoming citizen of the country, you are entitled to certain rights which are enshrined in the constitution. You know that our constitution has a specific section on the fundamental rights which every citizen of the country is entitled to. So in a sense, you know that the voting or participation in election actually is a gateway to the enjoyment of rights. So in these two senses of the term, that elections are so vital to the functioning of our democracy. So that's the first part of my uh, of my lecture. In the second part, let me say that how it turns into a festival in a country like India. Now, elections have acquired uh, a particular importance in a country like India. And that's the reason why I emphasize on the point that it has become a festival. Parv, that's the Hindi word which is used. I'm so glad that this word is being used. And I'm so glad that I become part of this great initiative. And I welcome you to this initiative as well. But let me explain to you why it's called a Parv or a festival, and in what sense we are in a sense obliged to observe it, and particularly the young voters. And I will refer to three main reasons why we need to celebrate democracy in a country like India. The first reason is that you know that uh, participation in elections is not a new thing. We have been participating since the first general election, which happened in early 1950s. So we have the large experience of having taken part. My father, for instance, was instrumental in conducting uh, the first general election. So I take pride in being an integral part of India's electoral history. So that way, you know that I'm extremely proud, and it gives me goosebumps actually to share my experience, my conversations with my father as well. I will refer to three main reasons why I consider elections as a festival. The first reason is that you know that our rate of voting has always been and consistently been very high compared to other democracies uh, elsewhere. Now, let me give you an example. For instance, in 2019, the last general election, Lok Sabha election, I'm talking about, uh, one third of the voters did not vote, which is pretty low compared to other countries. For instance, in 2016 presidential election in the United States, even less than 50% of people submitted their ballot papers. So you know that electronic voting is not the mode of voting in the United States. They still have been sticking to paper voting in a sense. It's only between 2018 and 2022, during these 4 years, and you include, for instance, all midterm elections, state elections in the United States, suddenly you know that there has been a surge in the turnout of voters in elections. In other words, the participation rate suddenly shot up between 2018 and 2022. It actually requires a lot of introspection and review that why suddenly this figure shot up. But even then, you know that it is about hovering around 67% of the total total number of voters, which is as high as that of India. Now remember that the elections in the United States are much more old than the elections in India, because you know that they have been functioning since when? Since 1787. I'm talking about US democracy, but compared to it, India is a younger democracy in terms of time. But then you know that we have achieved the figure of 66% as voter turnout even within these 76 years, which is quite amazing. So we have a very high rate of voting, number one. And you know what? Which is much more surprising is that a good number of them has been women voters. In fact, India has created a record in terms of voting, in terms of women voters in 2019 elections, which is pretty much high. And it's expected that it will continue to remain higher in future elections as well, uh, because you know that whatever data we come across through surveys which have been conducted in different parts of India. So that's one. And what is more important is that you see the rural people participating more in elections, and people, for instance, belonging to SCs or scheduled castes are participating more. Now, this is called India's second democratic upsurge by some commentators, particularly by, let's say, Christoph Jaffrello and others. This is called second democratic upsurge. What was India's first democratic upsurge? The first democratic upsurge was that people started enjoying the universal adult suffrage. It means basically everyone has a right to vote. But it's only in recent years that India has been passing through what is called the second democratic upsurge, which means that women are participating more and more in elections. And you see, for instance, scheduled castes taking part in elections in greater numbers compared to what they had been participating earlier. So that's the first reason why we need to celebrate. And you know that all of us, different constituencies, particularly the people who are yet to be part of the larger Indian mainstream, are taking part, coming out and celebrating democracy by way of participating in elections. The second reason is the regularity of holding of elections. In other words, elections are being held here almost regularly, periodically, uh, and without any interruption, more or less without any interruption. There have been interruptions, but you know that India is a big, vast country, and compared to its vastness, the interruptions have been very, very few, extremely few. It's amazing that India can conduct elections so peacefully in different parts without any hassle and without any large-scale violence. Uh, Examples of large scale violence are confined to very few pockets. Like I said, that India is a vast country, so these are quite negligible. On the other hand, you know that whenever there have been attempts at interrupting regularity in the holding of elections, the voters have thrown them away. So the voters want that elections need to be held on a regular basis, and this wish is expressed by the very act of voting. So that's the second reason why, for instance, we are justly proud of our elections and the way we conduct them. And the third is what I would describe as the demographic dividend. You know that the average mean age uh, of of Indians is 30. So we have the demographic dividend in the sense that we have a very large number of Indians who happen to be very, very young, between 18 and 29 years of age. And in the age group of 18 and 19, which means that they're the first voters, you have about 1.8 crore people at the moment. So in 2024, about 1.8 crore people belonging to the age group of 18, 19, and who are by all, I mean, in all probability, are the first voters, first time voters. They are going to cast their votes. So the number is amazing. And this time, our Election Commission of India is committed to enhance the voter turnout up to 75%. So the existing turnout is 67%. They want it to they want it to be enhanced up to 75%. Uh, Dr. Datta, do I have 2 3 minutes time so that I can conclude? So you are mute. You are on mute.
Sorry. Sorry, yes, of course. You have another 10 minutes you can go for
Oh,
that. Yes.
then it's all right. So
Yes.
let me now move over to the third part, which is basically the gems of advice that the fathers of our constitution have offered to us while conducting ourselves during voting, and while celebrating voting as the largest, celebrating voting in world's largest democracy. I refer to three major gems of advice, particularly to the young voters. And I assume that all of you will be the first time voters who will be casting their vote for the first time. So, what I mean, you might say that I'm just relaying what the fathers of Indian Constitution have said to the younger voters uh, in this respect, that as they cast their votes. The first piece of advice is that be rational. In other words, be rational meaning, in more negative terms, that you are not influenced by forces which are external to you. Listen to your own conscience and vote fairly and freely. In other words, without fear or without any constraint which are external to you. So listen to your own your own inner voice. Do not get carried away uh, by by forces which are external to you. Many of the fathers of our constitution, they had a fear that people might be swayed away. People in a country which is yet to attain higher levels of education and higher levels of literacy, for instance, there is every chance that they might be carried away by the high octane of propaganda and campaign. So their advice in this respect is that listen to the propaganda and campaign, be informed by them, but do not get carried away, do not get swayed away by the propaganda and the campaign. Campaign is important because we need to be informed about what the political parties have to say, what the contesting candidates have to say. But as far as casting vote is concerned, you only listen to yourself. Remember that India establishes the principle of popular sovereignty, and the constitution has been adopted and given to ourselves by we, the people of India. Our constitution begins with we, the people of India. So the people are the first, people are the second, and people are the third. And listen to only your voice and only to your voice and nothing else. So that's the first thing. The second piece of advice, I said, gem of advice, which is offered by the fathers of the Constitution while deliberating on the framing of the Constitution of India. The second piece of advice is that when you cast your vote, do not think only of yourself, but think of the country as a whole. In other words, they used a term which is called public good, a concept, a public good, that what is good for all of us, not just for me. Yeah, and you know that what is good for me may not be good for the country, but what is good for the country is good for everyone. So remember that election gives you an opportunity of casting your vote in favor of the public good. In other words, if you say that I only see my own interest, then obviously country's own interest will be compromised. So try to ensure that what is good for you is also good for others. And remember that what is good for others is also good for you. The, the fathers of our constitution wanted us to be free from bigotry, to particularistic interests, to chauvinism, to everything else which actually would be destructive to the country's interest. My third take away from the Constituent Assembly debates is that Dr. Ambedkar makes a distinction between casting your vote and voting your caste. Now, he played with these two words. Caste mean in the first case is CAST, but in the second case it is CAST. In other words, do not keep your baggage as you cast your vote. When you cast your vote, do not vote your caste. In other words, do not identify yourself with the baggage of identities, etc., etc. Be free. That's what Dr. Ambedkar would have said to all of us. I think that these are the three great pieces of wisdom that the fathers of our constitution have have handed over, transmitted to us, and I think we do a great job if we abide by them when we cast our votes. So, young voters, young learners, I would say that much of the country's destiny lies with you, and go and vote. Do not think in terms of spending the day by way of watching TV or other things. I think that it's part of your responsibility, part of your right, and part of your duty. Now, this is one thing that I must emphasize, that casting vote is as much your right as it's your responsibility or duty. So go and vote, cast your vote, and listen to your own inner voice. Nothing else, nothing is superior to you. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Professor Das, that was an amazing lecture. And, as I've always heard you before, so I almost expected it. You have so rightly made a nutshell of the basic points that our learners need to go out from here with. Since there was an observation about Hindi में बताने के लिए, ये जो प्रोफेसर दास ने कहा लास्ट में, ये जो 3 पॉइंट्स उन्होंने दी है, ये मुझे लगता है कि इट इज बियॉन्ड एनी बैरियर्स ऑफ लैंग्वेज. ये लैंग्वेज के लिए ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि आपको समझ नहीं आया. उन्होंने बताया कि अपना अंतरात्मा से पूछिए कि आपको किसको वोट देना है. कोई अगर आपको इन्फ्लुएंस करना चाह रहे हैं, छोटी छोटी शॉर्ट टर्म ये सब प्रलोभन देके आपको उससे बचना चाहिए. यू हैव टू बी वेरी वेरी श्योर कि आप किस लिए वोट कर रहे हैं. और जब आप वोट करने जाए, इसका भी ध्यान रखिए कि ये शॉर्ट टर्म जो अब हमारे लिए सोच के हम वोट करने जाते हैं, अल्टीमेटली अल्टीमेटली जो इसका जो भुगतान होता है, ये पूरा देश को भरना पड़ता है. क्योंकि हम अपने आप को सिंगल इंडिविजुअल की तरफ देखते हैं, हमारे जो चाहते हैं और हमारे जो ख्वाहिशें हैं वो सारे बहुत 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 ज्यादा होते हैं. एंड इट इज नॉट द ड्यूटी ऑफ द नेशन टू satisfy each one of us and our own objectives and our own greed. So as Gandhi ji had said, we have enough for our need but not enough for our greed. So voting and elect the electoral machinery, it is not a means of satisfying our greed. It is a means of satisfying what we need as a society, what we need as a country, as a nation, and also as what we need as a global citizen, because nowadays global citizen has become a very important part. हम सिर्फ एक ही आइडेंटिटी में नहीं जीते हैं, हम जीते हैं हजारों आइडेंटिटी लेके, और उसमें एक आइडेंटिटी जो है वो हमारी ग्लोबल, जो विश्व का जो हमारे जो आइडेंटिटी एज यूनिवर्सल मैन है, उसका भी होता है. सो इवन वोटिंग के लिए भी एक ये पर्सपेक्टिव अपने दिमाग में रखना बहुत जरूरी है. और थर्ड जो प्रोफेसर दास ने बहुत अच्छी तरह से कहा कि डू नॉट कास्टिंग योर वोट and voting your caste. This is so important because हो सकता है किसी सिचुएशन में ये कास्ट नहीं हो सकता है, कुछ और आ जाती है, उसमें रिलीजन आ सकता है, उसमें जेंडर आ सकते हैं, उसमें बहुत सारे डिविजिव फोर्सेस हो जाता है. सो उस वक्त कास्ट वाज इम्पोर्टेंट. सो हम लोगों ने उसमें कास्ट को, हम लोगों ने और हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली ने कास्ट को एम्फसाइज किया था. बट अभी जो है हमारे लिए और दूसरे डिविसिव फोर्सेस भी आ गए हैं. it can be anything. So usko dimag mein rakhte hue hamari jo dusre divisions hai, religious divisions हो सकते हैं, gender divisions हो सकते हैं, technology divide हो सकते हैं, वो भी है. ये सब बातों को रख के हमें वोटिंग करना चाहिए. और सिंस हमारे पास और थोड़ा सा टाइम बचा है, आई वाज थिंकिंग कि हम इस ओकेजन को थोड़ा सा इंटरैक्टिव भी करना चाहेंगे, बिकॉज वी हैव समबडी लाइक प्रोफेसर घोष विद अस आउट हियर. और बट बहुत डिसिप्लिन वाइज हम आपको बुलाएंगे. None of you will switch on your mic, but एक जैसे मैं क्वेश्चंस करूं आपको, आप अपना हाथ उठाएंगे. यहाँ पे आप लोग सब यहाँ पे, are you all here? For once, can you show us your face? Is it okay? Doesn't matter wherever you are. आप आपके काम में बिजी है, आप घर में बिजी है, क्योंकि Indira Gandhi National Open University does not make any distinctions of your time in that sense. So एक बार आप लोग अपने आप को दिखाएंगे, यहाँ पे जाहिर कीजिए, just for a thing. All of you are here. Yes, please show us जहां पे भी आप हैं. Very nice. और हाथ, but I can't see all of you. Can you please come on the thing? You are our young learners out here. We understand that you have the time to give that much to your university. So you can just raise your hands and show us once that you are all here for this lecture and you have understood what Professor Ghosh was trying to tell you. You understand your responsibility towards voting. All right. So here, most of you are first-time learners. Most of you are first-time learners out here. Please raise your hands for that. All first-time learners, raise your hand. So, आप लोग बहुत young learners हैं. You are the future of our country. And the way you decide, the way you understand our political system is going to make this country, it is going to decide the destiny of this country. And so you are young learners out here. Now I will ask three of you, what is your take from the lecture that was given by Professor Das out here? आप अपने लिए क्या सोच के जाएंगे जब आप वोट देने जाएंगे? इसका आप इस पर्व को आप कैसे मनाएंगे? I'm the first person. Okay, so I'm going to call out very randomly, but then that is, that's because we cannot. Amarjit Singh, are you here?
हाँ मैम.
I'm just going according to alphabet. So that's how, if you want to know why his name was chosen, I'm going to go according to alphabet. First one is according to alphabet. So Amarjit Singh, can you show yourself? आप क्या लेके जा रहे हो वापस, जो आप इस लेक्चर से आप अपने आप को आप कैसे एम्पावर्ड फील कर रहे हो? इस जो चीजें आपको बताया गया है, कैन यू शो अस? कैन यू कम टू द स्क्रीन प्लीज? हाँ, वेरी गुड अमरजीत, बताइए आपने इस लेक्चर से आपने क्या सीखा है? आप क्या लेके जाएंगे और कैसे ये पर्व को कैसे मनाएंगे?
मैम हमको अच्छा लगा ये सुन के कि हाँ, मतलब हमें ये ग्रुप में मतलब ये मैं बोल नहीं पा रहा कैमरा में.
अच्छा ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. अनुराग शर्मा, थैंक यू अमरजीत फॉर अटेंडिंग. अनुराग शर्मा, आप हैं यहाँ पे? अनुराग शर्मा, are you there? Akash Thakur, are you there?
रविंद्र कुमार मैम.
ओके, रविंद्र कुमार जी बताइए. आप एक बार कैमरा ऑन करके आप आइए और बताइए कि प्रोफेसर दास का ये जो हम लोग अभी डिस्कस कर रहे थे, इससे आपको
आकाश ठाकुर, यस मैम.
Akash Thakur, you were late. This is also a lesson in life. You can't miss your chance. You have to be, when you're given a chance, you have to take it. So Akash Thakur, will you come?
Sorry, ma'am.
Nahi.
Ma'am, I want to say something.
Okay, very good, Ipshita. You see how our girls our
So,
women are coming in front now. Yes, Ipshita, very nice to
so,
have you.
firstly, good evening, ma'am, and good evening to all present here.
And
And
Professor
it,
Professor Das is here.
Professor,
Please,
yes.
yes, acknowledge
So,
Professor.
according, like, I want to add on to what Sir said that voting should be on our consciousness. So, our consciousness sometimes divided into two parts, rational and irrational. So, we should choose the political leaders, their agendas and policy rationally. Okay, not just listening to our consciousness and randomly like giving vote to any party. So, we should do a research on their policies and all which
Yes,
is suiting us. In India is a very big country, the largest democracy, as Sir told, and it is divided into different segments. So our segment is we are in the college. So student politics also plays a very important role in the upcoming leaders. So this also plays a very important role. We should always do a research. That's what I'm saying.
yes,
We should do a research
absolutely correct.
and then
Informed
rationally.
decision.
Hmm.
Informed decision. I think Professor Das just said, you have to make an informed decision. You find out
Hmm.
all the, all whatever the political party,
Activities, yes.
yes, activities, and also rationalize their performance for so many years and how they have performed, and take a very very informed decision out there. So uh, that, thank you very much, Ipshita, you spoke very
Thank
well.
you, ma'am.
और
Hmm.
यहाँ पे आप बांग्ला में भी बोल सकते हैं और हिंदी में भी बोल सकते हैं. तो अगर किसी को झिझक हो रही है कि क्या मैं अंग्रेजी में बोलना है, नहीं है, आप बांग्ला में भी बोल सकते हैं और हिंदी में भी बोल सकते हैं. ठीक है. एंड देन आई विल आस्क
May I try, ma'am?
डॉक्टर भूप आई विल आस्क दिशा चक्रवर्ती. Ipshita has already
Madam, Protush Dhar, Poulomi, and
raised their hand.
Arthur Roy, they are asking something. They are
Okay,
in
one
meeting.
second. Polomi. Yes, Polomi, are you there? Please come. Come.
Yes, ma'am.
Come on the camera and yes, please ask. Polomi, are you there?
Ma'am, I just
Yes.
want to say that it was a very wonderful lesson for the first-time voters, and that's all.
That's all. বাংলাতে বলতে চাইবে কিছু, হিন্দিতে বলতে চাইবে কিছু? তুমি কি নিয়ে কি ভাবছো, কেমন ভাবে যাবে ভোট দিতে? এটা কি ফার্স্ট টাইম তুমি ভোট দিতে যাচ্ছ?
Yes, ma'am, it's my first time, and I will think as a whole for voting
Yes. Very good.
as a
Very good.
universal man, and after that I will vote.
Yes, very good. And Kostav,
ma'am.
who did you say was the next person? I can see a hand has been raised, but this is Dr. Bhupal Bhattacharjee. You may not be a first-time voter,
Yes,
but you would
yes,
still like to say something, and I would
yeah.
please introduce
Ma'am,
yourself.
Yeah, ma'am, I'm Dr. Bhupal Bhattacharya. I'm an assistant professor in Raiganj University, Department of Law.
Okay, so
Ma'am, since I'm from law background, that's why to have more qualifications, that's why I have taken admission in this current session
yes.
in BA program.
But I'm surprised
ma'am.
that you were called, because this time we were trying to limit ourselves to the first time learner and first year.
No issue.
Anyway, you can always give us your input, whatever you want to say, because all of us are voters and we need all reflections.
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, no, I'm sharing one of my practical experience that last two occasions I had also acted in the voting process as a presiding officer. So I realized that since sometimes we have been sent to very remote places where most of the voters are not so educated. Sir has rightly pointed out that we should consider my babies.
Doesn't matter. We all have those problems. That's okay. Tell me that.
So, ma'am, sometimes we need to feel like all the voters are not so educated. They don't feel like that it is their responsibility to have a very good government. They go by their whatever they have been taught. So what I personally feel that they must be educated, and somewhere or in our voting system, no, that kind of thing has not been so much of prioritized. So this is the thing I think that should be focused on, and that should be taken care of by the election commission, so that more number of voters can come forward, and they should cast their vote religiously, so that a good government can be formed, good administration can be done, and that way we can make progress. So this is my observation, ma'am.
Thank
And
you
sir
very
has
much.
said that, yeah, sir has said that we should consider not for ourselves, but for the entire community, entire India, entire country as a whole. And that way, no, everybody, every society, every person as a whole can grow together.
Thank you very much. Professor Das, maybe you should address this because this is really a problem.
No, no, no.
This is
I know this is a big question, but you know that uh, it's our country. They are our people, educated or uneducated, literate or illiterate. So, in that sense, you know that our hands are tied together. While I always am in favor of enhancement of literacy and uh, penetration of higher education into the deeper strata of the society, but at the same time, I would like to make a distinction between being educated and being able to make an informed choice. So, you know that there are many people who may be uneducated
Mhm.
by formal standard, but I have seen that they are much more politically mature than any one of us, for instance, in the sense that I may be very highly educated, but I may have to learn from someone who is not as much educated as myself in terms of political knowledge. I will not name him. In West Bengal, for instance, there is a leader, political leader, who has just passed class 10. But remember that he has become so articulate in terms of his interventions in parliament. He is a member of parliament, by the way. He speaks flawless Hindi. It means that he has learned a lot outside the formal education. And I would say that probably IGNOU has a role to play in this connection, spreading education up to the lowest rungs of the society. But I will still stick to the point that being politically wise may not have positive correlation to being educated. We may be educated, but may be politically very, very uninformed. And you know that it is seen, you have raised a very important point. It is seen that all across India, educated people are increasingly becoming apathetic about elections. They stay away from elections, particularly in urban areas. Particularly, for instance, students going to schools, to colleges, universities, and so forth. The CSDS Lokniti survey, for instance, comes out with this conclusion. So I will rather stick to the point that they may not be formally educated, but you know that they can make politically informed choice, and they are much more informed. Like, I mean, very unlike me. So I think that we need to be very, very cautious when we make any conclusion in this connection. Thank you.
Very, very correct. In fact, Professor Das, I'm just extending one of my concern, which I always feel. Sometimes maybe education to some extent, but when we are talking of poverty and when you have a choice of election, there is sometimes, how do you make informed decisions when as when you are actually the downtrodden? In those cases, how do you think it operates? Like, how do informed choices, in that case we talk about conscience, which is very correct. In those cases, do you think these are little problematic, and how does one deal with all these
I think this a very, very legitimate question, but I don't have any ready answer to
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes, of
your
course.
question. But
Of
let me
course.
try and offer a very tentative answer. Uh, One is, which is this, that you know that when you go without food, when your children starve at home, what do? Maybe that a political leader comes to you and offers a kilogram of rice
Right.
and asks him to vote.
Mhm.
So you fall prey to such allurements because poverty
Yes,
like
food supply.
Sanskrit saying says, poverty actually takes away all good virtues from you. Daridra dosha gunarashi nasi.
Ab-
But then that I now you cannot. But then you cannot hazard a conclusion in this connection, because you have, for instance, people who would say no. They might say that even if my children starve, I go without food. I will not. I will listen to my inner voice, and I will not listen to what you are saying. A. B. People have become very, very clever. They will take 1 kilogram of rice, but they will do exactly what they will, because
like that.
voting is confidential. So that's the second point. The third is, I think political parties, political leaders have a role to play in this connection. They should not do those things taking advantage of people's illiteracy or taking advantage of people's poverty. I think politicians should learn rather than our voters. That's much more important. Thank you.
So overall, a kind of an elevation of social character building, like overall an elevation of, so you know what you are tempting. And so I think, thank you so much, Professor Das, and thank you so much all our learners who are there. You took your time out to be in something which is an event for a social cause. It has nothing to do with your academic thing, and that's the reason I think I would like to thank each one of you. Whatever, you can always write your comments on our Facebook page, and whatever else you want to know, if there's any translations that you would like to hear about, we can also do that. Any part that you need not, haven't understood, although I tried to summarize a few parts and tell you in the in your local language, in whichever language you are in. So thank you very much, and let us be let us leave today in again another mood of celebration, because by okay, so I have a question out here by Ipshita Mukherjee says, how can we contact Professor Das? Professor Das is very well known, and his internet page is everywhere. I think his email address is also in the, yes, it is widely in that. So you can always, I'm sure I'm taking the liberty of saying this,
Oh,
Professor
no,
Das.
it's all right. I won't mind if you keep on communicating with me, but all my contact coordinates are there on the web page.
Yes, and thank you very much for that. And again, we end this in a very celebratory mood, because no matter what, we have to keep this this whole democratic democratic electoral process on, and ensure that free and fair elections are held again and again, again and again. There is no other second option to that. Thank you very much, Professor Das, and all the students, learners of IGNOU who have been here. Good evening, and have a very, very good evening here on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm logging out with your kind
Yes,
permission.
thank you. Thank you, Professor Das, for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.